Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Northland. It's St. Patrick's Day, so that must mean you're bringing the luck of the Irish into the call tonight. Farm Strong is a wellbeing program for farmers and growers, and the content that we share is informed by farmers and growers, just like you, and it's supported with some wellbeing science. That you've made the choice to be here tonight means that we're backing you to be Farm Strong. Well done on choosing to look after yourself, and with some of the tips and stories from our ambassador, Farm Strong ambassador Samuel Whitelock, and our Farm Strong program lead Gerard Vaughan, you'll be well set moving on after tonight. Now, the way tonight's going to go, at any time, don't wait until the end, just pop a wee question if you've got a burning question, just in that little box down the bottom, you'll see on the chat function. We're going to hide that so that we can see it, not that all of the attendees on the call won't be able to see that message in there, and then Gerard and Samuel will go through and answer those questions as they pop up. We won't mention your name, so unless you want us to. So yeah, feel free to ask away anything that pops up in your mind as you come along. Any questions we don't get to tonight, don't worry, one of us will reply to you in writing after the webinar. So hey, thanks to FMG, to the Northland Rural Support Trust and E350 for making this happen tonight. Glad you've all locked it in. Let's get warmed up with a poll before we get started. And all this is going to pop up on your screen, and just have a little click on there. What type of farming are you involved in? And that'll give Sam and Gerard a chance to see who we've got on the call. Gosh, we can see beef and lamb streaking ahead. Bit of Horton Bit coming through now. Oh, it's quite neat watching this. It's a bit of a race in there with dairy and beef and lamb. Very good. Everyone's had a little click. Let's share that so you can see who you are. How about that? Beef and lamb wins tonight, eh? And welcome to our dairy, our other, and our horticulture and viticulture friends as well. Good stuff. On that note, let's hand over to Gerard and Sam.
Oh, kia ora koutou, ko Gerard toka wingoa. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be the program lead for Farm Strong and have been around right from the very beginning. And yeah, just the format that we'll follow, I'll hand over to Samuel, and he'll do a bit of a talk about his background, and then we'll just start off. We've got a few questions that we'll kick it off, but we're really keen through the chat box for you to send through your questions as well, and we'll answer those as we go through. So hand over to you, Samuel.
Thanks, mate. G'day, everyone. It's a little bit weird. I'm just looking at a screen with Gerard and myself, so I'm sure you can all hear, but apologise if my voice is a bit cracky. Tested positive for COVID this morning, so had a bit of a rough week, and I also broke my finger in the game against the Chiefs on Saturday, so I had surgery on Tuesday. Got 3 kids at home, so my wife's complaining that there's 4 of us that are not helping out too much around the house, but it's just the way the world is at the moment, and we're getting through as much as we can. But kind of a bit about myself, really. So I'm 33 years old. I've grew up on a dairy farm in Linton, just 10 minutes south of Linton Army Camp. Mum and Dad are still on half the farm. The other half, my older brother George has taken over, and they milk between them 2,500 cows. So there's plenty to be done when at home. But I had the typical rural upbringing that any farmer's son could ask for. So there's 4 boys under 5 years of age, so we were pretty close in age, and had an awesome upbringing. Never had pocket money. For us, pocket money was, right, get outside, go do some work, or catch some possums with the 2 foxies that we had and pluck them. So we had that typical New Zealand upbringing. We got in trouble if we were getting in trouble individually. If we got in trouble together for some reason it was always seemed to be okay or a little bit less full on. But really loved my childhood. A lot of jokes, having three brothers, so I'm number 3 or 4. We pretty much did everything together. Even to this day, when we get together, which is not very often, we have our team, so it's always the oldest and the youngest team up against Adam and I. And it was awesome. We all went to a boarding school at Fielding High School. It was Fielding Ag when we first went there, and really enjoyed the challenges of going to a agricultural high school, co-ed. So I found myself in a little bit of trouble early on, but worked out that my 5 closest mates were going to help me through school and set me up onto the path that I wanted to be on. And I never thought rugby was an option until I overheard a teacher at school, whether he knew I was listening or not, but I overheard him as I was walking to class one day, and he said I was definitely going to be an All Black and play a lot of games for the All Blacks. And it's amazing what you hear when you need to hear it. And at that stage of my life is something that I actually really did need to hear, and that's kind of what started the whole process. And one thing led to another, and left high school, went down to the South Island, started studying at Lincoln University, and one thing led to another. So within the space of 12 months, I went from playing club rugby for Lincoln Uni to playing for the All Blacks, and it happened that quick through injuries. Uni was awesome time. Met my lovely wife there first day. Here we are with 3 kids later, and we've had 15 great years together. I know you all guys, you're all from Northland up there, and I spent a little bit of time up there fishing with some friends, but we did plan to get up there probably 6 years ago, but Hannah ended up getting pregnant, so haven't been up there as much as we would have liked. But it definitely is on the list to do. When I just get up there, arrive in Auckland, get a camper van, and just trip around for 2 to 3 weeks and have a look around at the awesome part of the country that I can't wait to see, because the little snippets I have seen, I just definitely want to get back there for a lot longer time and actually spend some time on the beach or in the bush and get to know some of the locals too. So that's a real quick snippet of me. Looking forward to answering some questions that you guys have. I'm sure there'll be some curly ones in there. I hope there is. But besides that, you're looking forward to getting to know you guys a bit better and hopefully catch up in person. Zoom is a little bit different to doing this in a hall or a school or something like that. So yeah, that's me.
Oh, great. And Sammy, you've played footy with a few guys from the Northland area?
Yeah, so growing up, I was very tall, so I'm over 2 meters tall, and I think when I was about 15, absolutely idolised Norm Maxwell because I was pretty much a spring bean, just like he was, skinny. So I just tried to copy him. I absolutely adored him. I remember him during the anthems before any test match or before a Crusaders game. He'd be jumping around, he'd be in the huddle or whatever, and he'd be jumping up and down. And I just tried to copy everything he did. And I was really lucky my first year down south, I got to meet him. And sometimes they say don't meet your heroes because they're not what you think. And it was definitely different to what I thought, but he's actually a really top man. I've actually got to know him really well over the last 10 to 15 years, catch up with him whenever I'm in Europe if I can. So I saw him in Paris last year. He's living in Spain at the moment. So even though there's a big gap in us playing against each other or anything like that, we didn't get to do that, but get along with him pretty well. And then other people, so obviously Jack Goodhue, spent the last 5 or 6 years teasing him as a younger outside back is what type forwards are meant to do. So Bronson Murray, Rene Ranger. So there's some great Northland people that I have had the privilege to play with and play against, and it's pretty humbling for a farm kid from Linton to go out there and do that.
Yeah, and then I mean, Tam, even though you're brought up on dairy, you've bought a sheep and beef farm, haven't you, in the Hawke's Bay?
Yeah, so dairy farm was everything I knew. But mum's originally from Canterbury actually, so she was brought up on a sheep and beef and partly cropping farm. My older brother's gone back to the family farm, like I said, so didn't want family scraps to happen or anything like that. So we've ventured out and we've bought some land in Hawke's Bay, and we've almost had it 4 years now, and I think it's about a week's time it'll be our 4 years since we've taken over. We pretty much bought the biggest piece of land we could afford, with next to no infrastructure. I don't think there's more than 100 metres of land-proof fencing in one stretch on it. So there's been heaps of stuff going into it. Just saying to these guys before, we're looking at sheep yard designs at the moment, and it's always a challenge trying to balance family, rugby, farming life, and working out how you get the best out of myself to do all those things. But pretty happy with the challenges that comes with farming from afar. But that's where we're going to end up when rugby does finish. So got a couple of years left. Like I said, I'm 33, so starting to get towards the end of my career versus the start of it. But definitely enjoying rugby still. But I know that when I do hang up the boots, or when I'm told to hang up the boots, we know where we're going and looking forward to that next challenge that's sitting there waiting.
And Samuel, I mean, we love having you as our ambassador for Farm Strong. And what's it been like being the ambassador for Farm Strong? What sort of the feedback you've been getting? What have been some of the highlights? And I suppose why are you why did you choose to do this when we met you?
Yeah, it's always an interesting question when people ask the why, or why Farm Strong, why not something else. I think the major reason for myself is I saw my parents go through some hardship. They've got a massive farm now, but it hasn't always been smooth sailing. I was at university, and mum and dad pretty good communicators. If anything, they over communicate, as four boys would say. And all of a sudden, the phone just went quiet. So for about 3 weeks, mum and dad, didn't really talk or anything like that, and didn't really know why. Rang a couple of times, no answers, which is not like my parents. And then finally got a hold of my little brother, who had just been back up from uni holidays, and he said mum and dad were really struggling. And I said, well, what's going on? And explained that the cows had salmonella, and the story goes dad left in the morning at 6 o'clock or whatever it was after doing some work, and he got out there, and the vet was there. The cows were getting crook, and the vet had said to start shooting them because they're trying to stop the spread of it. And dad left in the morning and got back at about 9 o'clock, and mum goes to dad, that can't have been that good. And dad goes, well, I'm only back because I ran out of bullets. And dad ended up having to shoot a whole lot of the cows. I think they lost about 200 of the milking herd and about 180 of the young stock that they just spent years of breeding to get them to where they wanted. And the main thing is mum and dad are resilient people, and I've seen them go through highs and lows, whether that's during farming or personal life or whatever. And I've never seen my parents that way. Went back to the farm as soon as I could, which was about 3 weeks later, and I still see the strain on them, obviously financially, but more emotionally. They had 30 odd years of breeding just go down the drain. Mum hadn't left the house for about 3 weeks, and that was my why, because I was like, well, if my parents, who had been farming at that stage for 30 odd years, could be affected by something like this, which was a bit of a random event. Imagine the people out there that might only have 3 to 5 years under their belt farming. They might not have the support network to lean on, people to call. So that was probably one of the major reasons. So after that happened, Farmstrong got in touch, and they said, look, are you interested? And I said, I'm more than interested, because I've seen it, and I wanted to make a difference. And if that makes a difference in 1 or 2 people or 1 or 2 households, well, it's definitely definitely worth it. So that was the why I started. To answer your question around some of the feedback I've had, it's amazing because I'm only a small part of the whole Farm Strong community and family. There's so many things that go on behind the scenes that make a massive difference, but I sometimes get the benefit or the reward of hearing some of the stories. And some days you're walking down the street with your family and your kids are being kids, and I've had a couple of people walk up to me, they've looked me in the eye, they've shaken my hand, and they've just said thank you. And I've gone, for what? And they've said, for Farm Strong. And they've turned and walked away. They've obviously had something themselves personally, or someone they've known really close to them has had an issue, or some negative thoughts, or whatever it is. And you can see that that has had a massive effect on them. So for me, why wouldn't I want to be involved in it? It's pretty humbling and pretty cool to know that myself, I'm having a small part in the Farm Strong story, and that's having a massive effect, not only on husbands and wives, but families, rural, semi-rural, horticulture, agriculture, viticulture, whatever it is. It's pretty cool to know that we are making a difference.
And so, with your background in farming, and then your sporting experience, and the fact that you're going to go back, into farming when you've finished with your sporting, I'm expecting that you're expecting stress and pressure to continue. And that's kind of just sort of for you to just reflect on what are some of the things that you draw on when times are tough, to get yourself through, and that you've either learned or that you're going to take back into farming, that you've either learned from your sport or...
Yeah, I think a lot of people ask around pressure. They ask around sporting pressure, and the best thing that I've had explained to me, and had that moment when the stone dropped, or however you want to explain it, was in 2011. I was 22, 23, and at that stage we hadn't won a World Cup for a long time. We had the World Cup at home, and we'd had done a lot of mental skills work from the 07, where we probably had a team that should have won it but didn't. Had one of the worst performances in World Cup history, and it was around wording and mindset. And I think that was something that really kicked in for myself, because I didn't actually understand what pressure was. I hadn't been to a World Cup before. I think, when you don't understand what the pressures actually are, as a younger player compared to talking to some of the older players, they had been to previous World Cups. They had lost, they had the team to do it, but they'd never done it. And it was something that Richie talked around, the senior players talked around, Kevin Mialamu, Mills, Brad Thorne, all those guys, was instead of letting that pressure get to you, it was, but how good is it going to be if we do get the job done? When we do it, how awesome is it going to be to say that we turned the tide? And relating that back to farming is, I know there's a lot of pressure on farming, and pressure on myself being a farmer in time. I know we're only a part-time farmer at the moment, but there's all those pressures there around whatever, whether it's around weather, stock, environmental issues. I think all those things, you can let that weigh you down. You can let that negative way of thinking affect you, or you can actually turn it around and go, okay, what happens if we do get ahead of the curve? What happens if we do things that the government, that the community turn around and go, oh, how awesome is that these guys are doing things that are ahead of the game? You're actually breaking down barriers versus being so reactive and letting that pressure get on top of you, because then you're being proactive. You're being reactive versus proactive. So that's something that I really enjoyed in answering your question. Hopefully I have, but
no, mindset. Two people can experience the same situation, and depending on their mindset, it can have quite a different impact on them. I think that's that's what I'm really taking out of what you've shared.
Yeah, I think with that too, don't get me wrong, you can't or you can try, I'm going to take on the world every day. But you actually need that time to step back and step away from it. Going back to 2011 World Cup, the biggest thing I remember is the amount of cards we played. And that was almost just our mechanism to escape, because you couldn't go for a walk down the street because it was New Zealand. There were people everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing an All Black jersey or a different nation's jersey. So it was one of those things we needed in a way to escape. We found a couple of little coffee shops. We worked out some good places to have a cup of tea, and that was just enough to step back and get away from that pressure. So then when we were involved in it, we could actually fully commit to it, rather than trying to sit there the whole time. It's pretty hard to do that.
Yeah, actually, you've had a really good question come through. I'm going to read it out verbatim, Samuel, because it's a really good one. So person's asked, look, at times some farmers feel attacked through the media despite industry organisations' assurance that it isn't significant. What strategies have you seen to be successful in rising above those feelings of being unloved?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. The media. The best thing I got told was don't read it. And when I heard that, I was like, what do you mean? And it was Brad Thorne said, look, it's just one person's opinion. The media at times, what are they trying to do? They're trying to sell a newspaper, and now they're trying to get a click. So they're just trying to get you to click on that website or click on that stuff article or whatever it is. And sometimes, like I've seen this myself personally, they've misquoted you, they've written this headline, and whether it's true, whether it's a little bit of manipulation of words. And the biggest thing with that, I think, is don't read it. The other one is, if you read it, you go, okay, this is someone's opinion. What are they actually trying to achieve, and what are they trying to do? So I think that's the big one in my mind. And the other way it is, my auntie's a assistant principal at a pretty low decile school, and she said to me, 80% of her time is taken up with the 2 or 3 kids in the class, because the squeaky wheel gets their attention, the kids that are naughty, all those things. So it's a little bit the same with farming or any industry, really. The people that aren't abiding by the rules, the people that aren't putting their best foot forward for whatever it is, sometimes they get the attention, and it's never the people that are actually leading the game, the people that are doing everything that they're meant to be doing and more. They never get the attention, and it is something that I am aware of. And the rural divide is only getting larger, and that's something that hopefully by doing things like this, we can bring that divide back closer.
Yeah, I really like, I think it's really good advice, is just disengage, shut off. But also I think it's a bit related to what you're talking about, mindsets, that sometimes we can buy into thinking patterns, and like for overgeneralizing, for example, that we see something in the media and we think everyone thinks that, we overgeneralize it. And the reality is that there's huge support for agriculture, horticulture, for farmers and growers in New Zealand, and there's very good surveys to show the level of support. But so I think that's always quite good to challenge your mindset. Say, actually, is that true? Is what they're saying true? And as well as disengaging, changing from it.
Yeah. The other one that we talk about as rugby players, as All Blacks, is if you spend time with a 12-year-old kid and you take time to sign a jersey and have a 10-minute conversation or a 30-second one, they're going to go tell, I think it's 4 people. Where if you are rude, you don't take the time, they're going to go tell, I think it's 9. Don't quote me on those numbers, but it's something like that. So it's amazing how quickly a negative gets out there versus a positive. And that's what you're talking about with the media. There's nothing worse than so many people that are leading the industry is doing some amazing things. They're not getting any recognition, and the one person that potentially is not living up to what they're meant to be doing, they get all the attention, and then all of a sudden, people don't understand or don't don't realize what is actually going on out there. There are some people doing some amazing things, and it's not the Kiwi way. It's not the Kiwi way to celebrate people doing things. It's easier to chop people down or find the negative in things.
Samuel, something that a lot of farmers and growers have talked to us about is that just the expectations they put on themselves, which can be very high, and also just the expectations that people, for the businesses they're working in, and it's a very competitive, like agriculture, horticulture is incredibly competitive. Just I'd be interested in terms of what you've learned around how do you manage expectations and then also the inevitable disappointment. How do you wrap your head around it when, with all those expectations, things don't go, you don't succeed in the way that you would you'd wanted to?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and the first thing that came to my head was 2019 Rugby World Cup. Expectations, we'd won 2 in a row. We had a pretty solid team, had coaches that had done it before, had players that had done it before. We'd beaten South Africa round 1. We'd gone through, we'd just played Ireland. They'd beaten us a couple of times the year before. All of a sudden, we had a really good quarter final. The expectation was that we were going to go the whole way and come up against a spirited English side. Things didn't go the way we'd planned, all those things, and we didn't win. So all of a sudden, we're knocked out of the tournament in a semi-final. Was it close? No. Did we want to change things? Of course we did. But could we? No, we couldn't. So it's actually understanding that, yes, we're rugby players, but at the same time, we're also fathers, sons, farmers, university graduates, whatever. And it's making sure that you don't only think you're one thing. So whether that's a grower, a dairy farmer, whatever it is, there's so many different areas that make you up to be the person that you are. And yes, sometimes areas are not going as well as you'd like. And that was something that definitely made it put some things into reality after not playing as well as you personally would like or the team would have liked, to go, actually, just because I haven't won this one game or this tournament, it doesn't change who you are, what you stand for, all those things. It just doesn't mean you get over it straight away, and I'm sure those scars will be there till the day I die, but it is something to make sure that you don't get caught into a negative spiral for too long. You've got to get out of that spin. And the expectation side of it is, as All Blacks, as Crusaders, at times we're expected to win every game, and if we don't win by 50 points, it's not enough. If you win by 50 points, the opposition was too easy. If you win by 2 points, it's you weren't good enough. If you lose, it's even worse. So the expectations are there every week, and that's something that you've got to get used to as a rugby player. And it's the same with a farmer, but realizing that you don't want to drop, and sometimes you can't do anything about a drop, but it's making sure that drop doesn't happen for too long. You want to smooth out that curve so then you can become more consistent. And that's one thing that we try to do as rugby players, and what I try to do as a rugby player. So if I do lose some form, it's only for a short time, not a long time. Easier said than done, but that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice around not to define yourself by the results that you get. And I've heard some other farmers, but very wise farmers, saying that you're winning or you're learning. They've sort of taken failure, because the reality is that things won't always go according to plan. So I thought that was actually, this has been another really good question come in that and I'm going to read out verbatim again. It's a great question. We often talk about the rate and volume of change farmers are having to deal with. how do you deal with this to avoid being overwhelmed?
Yeah, it's great question. I think 9 times out of 10, for me, if I'm overwhelmed, it's probably because I haven't nailed home. So I haven't done my prep for whatever I'm doing. For me, with rugby, so 9 times out of 10, it's the kids are sick or something's happening there. If I can nail home life, that allows me to nail my rugby prep. And it's amazing when people have kids as rugby players, all of a sudden their game normally gets better because they've got to nail their home life, because they've got, right, I've got a young one at home, I've got to do this, this, and this. It allows them to get to training. All of a sudden their training plan becomes more locked in. They know they can't cruise all day. They've got to be there, be present, and then step away. And I think that's the major thing for myself. If I nail the Monday to Friday, Saturday's the easy part, being game day, and looking at the other side of farming, it's almost you get to sharing, but if you've done all your work beforehand, it's easier to do your sharing because your sheep are in good nick, you've crutched them beforehand so they're not daggy, all those things. Same with milking cows or calving. You know, you've done the work beforehand, so then, right, I'm here in the busy part, I've kind of beforehand, so you're as fresh as you can be, your space mentally, physically, it's easier rather than coming in late and it's all a bit scratchy. So that's what I personally feel when I'm overwhelmed, but everyone has different reasons for being overwhelmed. Sometimes it's a number of reasons, but that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to just to ask you about what some of the, particularly the important habits that you have that in Farmstrong we talk about. That's a bit like a wellbeing bank account, that you have, life makes withdrawals on you, and speed of change is definitely, makes a withdrawal on our wellbeing. And it's a bit like a strategy. You've got to make regular small investments in your wellbeing. So I will ask you just around what are some of the important habits, but I'm just going to give a shout out to someone who's actually giving a shout out to Surfing for Farmers. So that's, and what we're really hearing from a lot of farmers who are, every day feels like a big game day on the farm. There's a list as long as your arm, and you'll never get it all done, and it can be feeling very overwhelming. And I think farmers who've joined the Surfing for Farmers is a great example that they've actually made a decision to invest in their well-being by getting off the farm, learning something new, connecting with other farmers, getting some exercise, and coming back with a sort of a clearer head. Now, those problems are still going to be there, those overwhelming problems, but just what we're hearing from farmers who have built in some of those habits, that they feel they're just in a stronger position to deal with it. So just sort of keen for you to just sort of comment on that, what you think about that, whether it's Surfing for Farmers or getting out for bike rides or learning something new, and what are some of the ways that you invest in your well-being?
Yeah, Surfing for Farmers is awesome. I've actually got a Zoom call with them next week, so looking forward to catching up with those guys and finding out who's been ripping the tunnels and who's no good. I think the main thing with that, the first thing that came through my head is there's no pressure for those guys learning to surf, so they don't have to be the world's best surfer in 3 weeks' time. So if they go out there and stand up once, then they go have a couple of beers and catch up with old mates and make some new ones, then it's been successful. And I know for myself, when we're away on tour, at times I just need to get away. So whether that's just putting some shoes on and going for a walk and having a look at the 2 blocks that next to the hotel is actually just enough to get away. I have found when at home and at our place in Hawke's Bay is because you're living on the business, you look out the window and you see, okay, those 3 ewes are on the crop, or it's those dairy cows are hungry. You cannot actually get away from your business, and that can be the really hard thing. And it's the same with rugby too. When you're stuck in a hotel, you cannot actually get away, or to get away is harder. So I think that is the thing that surfing for farmers, or some of the great things communities do, whether it's I heard of one down here, there's about 15 guys get together in a wool shed every Wednesday night, and they have a workout, a circuit for 30 minutes. The circuit's not the thing they go for. They go for the catch up afterwards. They go for the sausage sizzle and the one or two lemonades or a beer or whatever it is. And for them, that's how they actually get away from farming, get away from their pressures, because they're mixing with sheep and beef, they're mixing with deer farmers, all those things. So some of their problems they can't actually, complain about, because the people there don't actually know how to fix it. So it actually gets them away from their day-to-day pressures, and it actually gets them to feel good because they're exercising, and it's just something a bit different. But again, it's a routine too. So that's what I like. I like having a routine for myself to get away. I love my hunting, love my fishing. So love taking the kids out, even though they're still pretty little. They think pig hunting is sitting in the truck as dad runs off and tries to catch something, as Hannah, my wife, sits in the truck and tries to control them. But yet again, it's routine. So it's good to get away, no cell phone reception for an hour or two, and then that's something that definitely helps me.
Yeah. So our call to action in Farmstrong is, find out what works for you and lock it in. So lots of farmers now are sharing the practical things that they do. And so we've, having regular stories and tips and advice, and people are different, the different things, but the important thing is to find out what works for you and to lock it in. And that's and so if you are feeling, overwhelmed, or you with the speed of change, or you're getting too busy, you need to find out what are some of those small regular habits that you can do that invest in your well-being to help you get through.
I think, sorry, I'll just jump back in there, Jill. The other one I heard, which was really good, when things are not going well, so we lost the last 2 games, the end of year tour, stuck in a hotel room for 2 weeks, it's quite easy to kind of have the tap on constantly dripping, just a bit of a whinge and a bit of a moan the whole time. And someone said to me, just turn the tap on, just turn it all the way on, get it out, just share your problems. A problem shared is a problem halved. And then all of a sudden, turn the tap off, and then all of a sudden you feel better. Where if you constantly let it drip, and you're just constantly in that stage of, oh, the world's against me and this, where if you actually go, right, bang, here it is. And I've actually heard of people doing it to their dogs, because their dogs don't reply back, which is something, sounds quite funny, but they look at you, and as long as you're feeding them and you're being nice to them, they think the world of you. And kids are the same. The kids don't care if you had a rough day. As soon as you walk in the door, you're the superhero. So it's pretty awesome when you can tap on, get all that stuff out, whether it's good or bad, and then turn it off too. So that's something that I think definitely helps. So it's not building up, and then there's a big release. So if you just turn it on, turn it off.
Yeah.
Something that I use too.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I once did a workshop with a bunch of shepherds, actually. We talked about trying to identify what were the biggest stresses in their life. And interestingly, actually, it was their dogs. So I know I'm sure they were mouthing off to them a bit, but I'm not sure if they were, whether that was actually achieving necessarily the outcome.
Well, at least the dog knows.
Yeah, look, actually, we've got another great question that's come through. I'm going to read it out verbatim. It's a really good question. Is that a lot of farmers flag away sport when they get busy. When you go back into farming, will you keep a connection to sport? And then, how can things like the local rugby club or coaching kids sport help you keep well when you're on the farm? So,
yeah, great question. Like I know for myself, stepping away from rugby, and that's all I've known all my life, because I've played since I was 4 with my two older brothers. Was my first team. So as soon as I step away from playing professionally, I don't think I'm going to put the boots on and play for my club, but hopefully I can have an involvement there somewhere, because there'd be nothing worse. I've been very lucky myself. I've been passed on so much knowledge, been coached by some amazing people. For that knowledge to stop with me, I want to give that back. Whether I'm coaching rugby, probably not, but I'd love to coach my daughters playing basketball, my son playing volleyball, or whatever it is. So I hope I can pass on that somewhere. And because we've been in Christchurch for 15 years and we're going to Hawke's Bay, we know a few people there, but we don't know a lot. So our kids probably don't realise, but we're going to make our friends through them. And that's probably going to come through the sporting field or the hockey turf or whatever it is. So I'm looking forward to helping out there in any way I can. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I don't apply unneeded pressure onto my kids, especially if Fred wants to play rugby. So he's going to play his first Ripper year this year, and he's playing with some other kids that their fathers have played for the Crusaders or All Blacks. So it's going to be a bit of pressure on that team to perform. But you know, they don't care, that they don't know any different. But it's one of those things, you've got to make sure that they are acting and behaving as well as they can, whether it's win, loss, or draw, respecting referees, all those little things. So the magnifying glass is probably a little bit harder on them, but that's just the challenge that you've got to deal with being a rugby player. So looking forward to really getting amongst the community through the sporting world, whether it's dog trialing or any of that other stuff too. So yeah, it's going to be critical for us.
Yeah. Sam, I just wanted to ask you about, I mean, you've talked about, you know, when things aren't going that well, you know, turning the tap on and having, you know, whether it's talking to your dog or someone, you know, a friend or someone that, you know, and I know that, you know, there's a lot of people are really emphasizing on, if you're going through difficult times, you know, don't withdraw, you know, speak to someone. And that's really important, that we do have people that we can talk to. What we're really, there's another side to the coin on that, and it's something that you've also talked about a lot in your role as Farm Strong ambassador, that if you've got no one who's really listening to you, you know, you've got things are not going well, and you haven't got people around you that are actually good listeners. And so we're really promoting, you know, what makes a good listener, and why is it quite challenging sometimes for us to be good listeners. So I was just keen for you to just sort of reflect on your thoughts on just around what makes a good listener, and maybe some of the challenges that you have in your leader as a leader, you know, how you become a good listener to the people you're leading.
Yeah, I think for myself, this was probably one of my areas that was a bit of a blind spot at the start. I was first named captain of the Crusaders in 2017, and following on from guys like Richie and Kieran, and all of a sudden, you know, you're captain of this team, and I was captain of the All Blacks in one of those games at the end of the year in 2017 too, and you're kind of going, well, hang on a minute, am I actually ready for this? And if anything, I filled silence. So that was my biggest learning, is actually embrace silence. So ask a question and actually wait. And sometimes it's, you know, you've got to be pretty disciplined and count to your head 20, 19, 18, 17. You get to about 3 or 4, and then the answers will come. Or sometimes it's actually asking the same question twice. And Kevin Malami was an expert at this. He was so good. So you go, how you doing? You're like, oh, yeah, good. But then you're like, but how you really doing? And then all of a sudden, as a younger player, you'd be like, boff, you're giving me everything. And you go, okay, cool, I can help you here, and this is how we're going to do it. And he just had that feel of a great listener. Didn't try to fix your problems straight away. He probably just got you to say it out loud, and then you actually thought, okay, that is an issue. Okay, I'm going to go try to sort it myself. And then he'd check in with you, sometimes a day later, sometimes 2 weeks later. But he just had the ability to watch, to listen, and he's a guy that I definitely learned so much from. And it's interesting now, being a parent, you use some of those little tricks on your kids, and it's actually quite cool when you see some of those things that you pick up and you use it with your kids, and you go, okay, actually I'm starting to make a bit of a difference there. And yeah, it is hard for myself. Like I said, coming from a family of 4 boys, if you showed any weakness or anything like that, she was all on. But that's probably my wife coming out of me a little bit now too, just having that softer, softly touch, and um, rather than just being ripped and bust, just straight into it. So yeah, that's something that I've definitely learnt around being a listener. But for us as rugby players, we kind of don't have an opportunity in a game, because we get judged on our 80 minutes, so we can have the best preparation to the game, but if we don't perform in the game, it's not, that's how we get judged. So at times I don't have the time or the luxury of time to go to someone and actually take time to entice an answer out. Sometimes you just got to take the approach of, this is what I need, this is how I need it done, go do it, and then you can go sort it out afterwards. So after the game, you can go have all those silent conversations, or the quieter ones, and the connection. But the other one is also yourself. So you don't have time to get away from it in a game, because the next thing's happening straight away. And the biggest thing I've learned is actually getting outside your mind. So for me, it's actually wiggling my toes. So something's happened, whether I dropped the ball, knocked on, penalty, whatever, it's actually just wiggling my toes, because all that does for me is gets me outside of my brain, outside of that loop of, okay, I've just given away a penalty, they're having a shot at goal, that's going to put them up in the game, it's putting more pressure on us. As soon as I wiggle my toes, then I get back to, right, what's my next task? This is what I've got to do. I can't change what's happened, but this is what I've got to do. So it might be catch the kickoff, catch the line out, push hard in the scrum. But that's how I've kind of done it myself, and every player has their own way of doing it. So that's, yeah, a bit of the inside of being a good listener. And sometimes you don't have time to listen, because you just got to get the job done.
So actually, here's another great question's come through. What do you think is the best way to educate our young farmers to be mentally aware?
Yeah, I'd love to see everyone's faces, and I'd throw this one all back straight to you guys, because you guys have been farming longer than I have. But I think the major thing is actually working out what that person's like. BJ Lahore said it to his All Blacks as he was a coach and selector, and as a player. He said he had to work out who needed the carrot or the stick. So who needed the cuddle to feel really connected, to then explain to them what they needed, and who needed the stick, and everyone fits in between those people somewhere. Sometimes it's a stern word, sometimes it's actually the encouragement, and that's probably upskilling the young farmers, is making sure you understand what they're like as a person first, and then that kind of manipulates how you deal with those people. So whether it's actually, hey, go put in that strainer post, let them make the mistakes, and then go help them fix it, versus sometimes you go show them how to do it with it. Everyone's different. So I know my older brother, you let him go do it, and when it's terrible, then you go back and show him, because if you try to show him at the start, he'll, even though he's never done it before, he'll tell you that he knows what to do. My little brother, for example, is the opposite. You take him over there, he's going to listen to everything, he's going to write it down, he's going to take it all in. But if you said to him, go do it at the start, he's probably going to ask you to go help him. So it's working out the difference between people and what your best bang for your buck is. So is it you have them with you, or is it actually go learn by doing? So and that's what we have with rugby players. So some guys need to have those lessons and go, oh, actually I need help here, where other people just want all the information at the start.
Yeah. So really what I'm hearing you saying, Sam, is as a leader, sort of having that insight that actually your team members will be different, and that they won't be the same as you, and that they'll learn differently. And in terms of developing some of those sort of mental awareness skills, or whatever, that there may be different ways of helping them do that, as a leader. And I'm just sort of, it's interesting, a lot of when we talked to farmers and surveyed them and said, look, what are some of those real stress and pressure points? We've talked about a number of them, not getting time away, financial pressure. But actually the one that, compliance and regulation, comes up. But actually there's this other one around managing people in relationships. And that, some farmers have said to us, look, what I love about farming is I love working with land, stock, machinery, but I'm finding I'm spending a lot of time trying to manage relationships around either part of the supply chain or shearers coming in, or I've got some people working for me. What have you learned about sort of managing people as a leader?
I've got a smile on my face because I'd love to be there in person, and I'd pick on the shortest person in the crowd and I'd say, can you come stand up here? And I'd stand next to them and I'd explain, all right, okay, can you be an angry little referee? And I'd talk around me being tall, like if I stood front onto this person, what it gives my body language is, even though I'm not trying to be, because I'm taller than normally a shorter referee, it gives that I'm challenging your call. So straight away the referee will step away. They won't want to talk to you. Versus if you stand to the side, you open, you widen your stance of your legs, how you hold your body shape definitely invites them in to have a conversation. And that's what I really enjoy with rugby. I enjoy the human element of it, of it sounds really bad, but not controlling people, but having an influence on people, whether they're playing with you, against you, refereeing, and how they all react. So body language is a big one. Everyone can pick up on, the simple things like arms folded. Okay, his defensive body position, body posture. There's someone that's leaning forward, engaged, hidden, and that's probably the area that I've enjoyed getting to know, especially over the last maybe 5 to 8 years, because when I first arrived, I just didn't care. I just wanted to go out there. I just wanted to go hard and play. I didn't care if I ran over top of you, even if you're on my own team. I just wanted to go out there and be better than you and play well. But then I actually realized I needed these people to come with me. So understood that sometimes for me to give them a message as a captain was not the right thing. I had to actually go to maybe one of their close friends that would have more impact if they gave that message. They give the same message, but they'd say it differently. And that's, I think, the art of leadership. There's so many different forms of leadership. You've got the strong, silent type, won't say anything, go out there and play well, and that's how they're going to lead. You have those other people that are going to jump up and down and perform. Some people love that, some people hate that, but you can't just have one form of leadership. There's so many different ways of doing it, and for me, it's never just been about myself. Sometimes it's about developing another leader that's going to have a bigger influence than yourself, and that's going to be the best thing that the team can have. And sometimes that's the same with farming. It's actually getting the junior or the young shepherd or the young viticulturalist or whatever it is to take more of a lead, because that's actually going to get more out of the business will get more out of that person having more development versus the guy to IC. So it's working that out and making sure the plan goes from there. But obviously there's so many different things that come into that. That's what spins my wheels, really.
Yeah, no, I really like what you've said, because I mean, farming's all about growing things, isn't it? It's growing,
it is, yeah.
Growing grass, it's growing good stock, and I think what we're really on about in Farmstrong is it's about growing people as well.
Yeah,
there's people who are looking after themselves, but actually looking after the team, and that it's really good for performance. But it's also, protective of some of the more common mental health problems, and increasingly we're seeing that it's also it reduces your risk of accident and injury because you're mentally in a better space. Similar to what the earlier question was, how do you make young farmers be more mentally aware around some of those risks? It is around, sort of being on top of your well-being and looking after yourself in terms of knowing, understanding your mindsets and having those good sort of well-being habits in place.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and it's like I'm not kidding myself. I know when we go to the farm, I'm going to go from an environment, at the moment there's 40 guys as rugby players, there's another 10 there is management, so that's 50 guys that all want to be better and improve all the time. So I'm in this weird little world where everyone wants to be better, everyone wants to be the best in the country, best in the team, go for higher honours, all those things, to then when I end up at the farm, we're going to have maybe 2 to 3 staff, and some people are happy in that role that they've had, and that's going to be the challenge for myself. I'm going to want to help them improve and get better, and that's where I've come from. But the same reality, some people are happy in the role they're in, so it's going to be interesting for myself to see how I deal with that and how I can help and make sure I don't annoy people in the wrong way. So I don't pretend that I've got all the answers, because I know I don't, and it's going to be interesting when I do go back to the farm, how that all operates and goes from there.
Yeah, it'll be a very different phase of your life and for you and your family, won't it?
Yeah, and that's something that, like I said at the start, would love to get up to a lot of these cool places up north, and hopefully pick some brains of some pretty awesome people on the call. I've heard some cool stories about some of these people, so yeah, there's always looking to learn.
Yep, no, we're really looking for an opportunity to try and support you to get up north. Samuel, look, we've got time for one last question, and I see there's one here, and actually it's a good question. Actually, it says, what does it mean to you to be farm strong?
Yeah, for me, I've never been asked that, actually. That's a
good question.
I think for me, it's actually to be open, because when I do go back to the farm, or when I am on the farm at the moment, it's all new. So that's a good one. That's a chocolate fish question right there.
It is,
it's going to be open, because I don't have the answers. I've got an idea, but making sure that I take the advice from people that have potentially been there before. So that's going to be the interesting one for me. I potentially will be listening to a manager, a young shepherd, etc., because they might actually know more than me. So being open to that, but then at the same time sticking to my strengths too. So knowing that I've got a hard work ethic, all those things. But yeah, that probably sums up where I want to be. So if I'm open to trying things, open to looking at the latest and the new technology, but at the same time talking to some of the people that have been around a lot longer and finding out how they've done in the past and how they've been successful. So, yeah.
Look, Samuel, we're bang on 8:30, and I just really want to first thank you for being so open and sharing things about your life and what you've learned, and but I also want to really thank, and unfortunately we haven't been able to see all the awesome people who you've been talking to, but thank them for giving their time, and also particularly for the questions that has come through. And there's been some fantastic questions here. Look, we've just got from someone just said, look, it's been great listening. Oh yeah, Difflam throat spray is the best help at night for your throat. From one COVID to another. Get well soon. Well, that's lovely. That's a great.
No, I have to admit, my lovely wife brought a cup of tea with some honey in it, so she definitely could hear my voice starting to crack. So.
No, that's right. So that's look, on behalf of the Farm Strong team, I just want to thank all these beautiful people that we haven't been able to see from Northland who've participated in this event tonight, and the great questions that we've got. You're really keen if you're, we've got a ton of great stories from farmers and practical tips and advice on the Farm Strong website. So really encourage you to visit farmstrong.co.nz, and yeah, just that you're not alone when you're going through tough times, and that alongside the supporting partners, the Northland Rural Support Trust, Extension 350, FMG, And it's a real team effort within the rural community around making sure that people aren't isolated and living alone and staying connected. And this webinar tonight's just been an example of that. So look, thank you very much, everyone. I'll close the session.